SOP 290. Today we're talking about troubleshooting your podcast.
It's the School of Podcasting's morning announcements. Here's Dave Jackson.
Podcasting since 2005. I am your personal podcast coach, Dave Jackson, thanking you so very, very much for tuning in. If you're new to the show, this is where we talk about all things podcasting, from planning to promoting to producing to monetizing, everything you need to start a successful podcast. You can find it out at theschoolofpodcasting.com. If you want to contact me, I would love to hear from you. It's super easy. You can email me, dave@schoolofpodcasting.com. You can call in your comments, 888-563-3228. You can leave a comment at the blog at, again, schoolofpodcasting.com. And want to talk today about troubleshooting your podcast. And if you're going, I don't even have a podcast yet, you might want to tuck this one away for later. But it's something I've taught. I've been a corporate trainer for years, and it's something I actually used to teach a troubleshooting class. And I thought, well, how can we apply this to podcasting? And I actually used it this week because I had a strange buzzing going on. And I'm going to explain how I did that. Now, one of the things you need to keep in mind when it comes to audio, if you're a regular listener to the show, you know that I constantly obsess over my audio, and it's never probably as bad as you think it is. So, especially for me, I'm always listening in my car or on the treadmill, somewhere where I have a lot of background noise. So a lot of times those little noises aren't even going to really cause a problem with your listener. But here's what you want to do. Here's what troubleshooting, the goal of troubleshooting is to basically isolate all the parts of a system. So in this case, our system is my microphone, which is plugged into a mixer, which is plugged into a portable recorder. So how do I troubleshoot that? Well, again, you want to isolate things. So what I did was I had this little buzz going on. So I went over to my mixer, which has 4 different channels on it. So I could plug 4 different things into it. And I made sure that all the other channels were turned off. So I was only listening to the one channel, and the buzz was still there. So I went, okay, well, let's make sure it's not this channel. So I turned up one of the other channels and plugged my microphone into that. And sure enough, the buzz was still there. So it wasn't the original channel that I was plugged into. So I could cross that off the list. Then I want to make sure it wasn't the cable that goes from the mixer into the recorder. So I unplugged that cord, still had the recorder going in, and the buzz went away. And I went, okay, well, I know it's not the cord, because if the buzz was still there, the only thing that was plugged into the recorder was the cable. So it wasn't the cord. And I went, okay, so I know it's not the channels on the mixer. It's not basically the mixer. And so the only thing that was left in that scenario was the recorder and the microphone and the cable that plugged the microphone into the mixer. So I unplugged the cable from the mixer and got another mic cord and plugged in the microphone. And lo and behold, the buzz went away. Now, if the buzz hadn't gone away, what I would want to try is a different microphone, because it might just be that for whatever reason, that microphone has had a bad day and just had something that caused it to create this annoying little noise. And in this case, it was the microphone or the microphone cable. And the reason for that is I'm actually using what's called, I believe it's called a scissors mic stand. It's something that I can actually, now this is going to make noise as I move this around here. You'll hear this. And, I can adjust this up and down and move it back and forth. And it's actually got a spring on it. So if you want to play it, there we go. Now, one of the things I want to talk about is if you ever hear something called a shock mount, what that does is it basically allows your microphone to kind of get suspended in thin air. So that if you accidentally, let's say you're like me and you talk with your hands and you bump the mic stand, it doesn't make that noise. Obviously, I do not have a shock mount on this particular microphone. I did on my previous one. And when I upgraded to this microphone, I need to buy kind of a universal shock mount. But the problem with this particular microphone scissor stand is that the cable, which is nice, it came with the cable. But when you start swinging your microphone around back and forth, it really kind of put a kink in the cable. And I believe that's what was causing the noise. So, and it was nice. It had this really long, like 15-foot cord. And my advice is look where you're going to have your studio at. You don't really need these long cords. In fact, many times all they do is cause a mess. And so I'm actually using, I'm going to say maybe a 6-foot cord. It's really short, but that's all I need. I'm just going from here to there. And so again, by isolating the different parts of a system, you can troubleshoot what it is. Now that also works with your website. So for instance, if all of a sudden when you went to log into WordPress, there were all these error messages and things like that, the first thing you want to do is turn off your plugins. Now, if you're new to podcasting, let me explain what a plugin is. I always say that a plugin is kind of like air conditioning on your car. You have the basic car, which is your tires, your steering wheel, your brakes, your gas, things like that. And then you spice it up with air conditioning and power door locks and power windows. Well, a plugin kind of takes the basics of a website and adds things like podcasting and adds things like Twitter and adds things like, SEO, search engine optimization stuff. And so you can add these things to WordPress, which is great because many of these are free. But in some cases, when WordPress updates, the plugins don't work. So it'd kind of be like having a, power door lock for a door, but then they change the shape of the door. Well, the power door lock may not fit anymore, things like that. So what do you do? How do you figure out? All you know is you just got this weird error message on your website. And so you can go in, turn off all the plugins, and then turn them on one by one. Each time you turn one on, you go back to the front page of your website, you refresh the page, see what happens. If the error is still there, it's not that plugin. You can turn it back off, turn the new one back on, and basically just turn them on and off and on and off and on. It's a tedious and a slow process, but by isolating each part of a system, you can see if it works or not. And since we're talking about troubleshooting, I thought I would talk about one of the most frequently asked questions, one of the most, to be truthful, easiest problems that I fix. So I'm actually going to kind of cut myself out of money here in the future because I've just charged somebody for 15 minutes for fixing this. But my goal is to help you, and if this will help you, why not? So when you log into WordPress, under settings, there's a option here for reading. And what this is somebody comes to me and says, I just put out a new post and they're not showing up in iTunes. Here are the things you can check. Under settings in WordPress, under reading, you have an option there that says syndication feeds show the most blank amount of items. And by default, it's set to 10. So you could set this to, say, 99 and click on Save Changes. And now you could do 99 posts and those will show up in your feed. Now, I recommend using FeedBurner. This is a tool from Google that allows you to add the iTunes tags. Now, in some cases, what it does is it takes your basic RSS feed, which you've just said make 99 posts, and it adds these extra things that iTunes is looking for. I've talked about this in the past, and I talked about sprinkles on ice cream. iTunes wants these sprinkles. And so what may happen in some cases is you may put out a new episode, and for whatever reason, FeedBurner is sleeping on the job. This doesn't happen a lot, but it does happen, once every 2 years, maybe. I've seen it happen on the things that I do. It's very infrequent. I have some podcasts I've never had a problem with. Don't know what causes it, but the super thing is it's easy to fix. And what you do is you just log in to FeedBurner and you go under Troubleshoot Eyes. That is actually a tab, Troubleshoot Eyes. And you'll scroll down and you'll see an option that says Resync. When you click on that, it basically says, hey, FeedBurner, wake up. You're a few episodes behind. Go look at my original feed and update yourself. So FeedBurner says, well, I've got, according to my records, you have 94 episodes out. And it goes over and it looks at your website and goes, oh my gosh, there's 97. and it makes notes of that and says, okay, I've got all 97 now. I'm up to date in my notes, 97. And so what it is iTunes looks at FeedBurner. FeedBurner looks at your website. So now iTunes will always look at your FeedBurner account, always, the way I recommend setting this up. So when you tell FeedBurner, hey, go look at my website, and it goes, oh, sorry, I missed a couple episodes, and now it updates itself. When it updates itself, since iTunes is looking at FeedBurner, iTunes updates. So the key to that is whatever you're using to do your iTunes stuff. I recommend FeedBurner. Some people use the PowerPress plugin. That's another way to do that. Whatever it is, that is where you change. So if you look at your iTunes and you go, I don't like the description. I don't like the artwork. Typically for me, you go change that in FeedBurner. Why? Because iTunes, the way I set up podcasts, is always looking at FeedBurner. So you just go into FeedBurner, you change your description, you change your artwork, you change whatever you want to change, and then within a day or so, iTunes will take a look at your FeedBurner and update its settings. So that's how that works. So if you are doing something where this causes a problem in some cases is if you're using Libsyn. I recommend Libsyn as a media host. You're listening to a podcast right now that is hosted using Libsyn as a media host. However, originally Libsyn was set up to where you could do everything with a podcast. You could even submit your RSS feed directly to iTunes. They would put the sprinkles on. Now, anytime, the reason I don't recommend that, and this is nothing against Libsyn, I love those guys, is that tied you into Libsyn. If Libsyn, for whatever reason, God forbid, goes out of business, you would lose your RSS feed. Where now you're tying yourself to Google. I highly doubt that Google is going out of business. So, and also it tied you into only using the tools available on Libsyn's blogging system, which isn't as powerful as WordPress. So I don't recommend using Libsyn's blogging item. I just recommend using them as a media host. So what I do is I simply go over, I make a new post, I type in a title, and then I upload my media and I tie that to that title and I click on publish. Libsyn says, okay, I uploaded your file. Here's your link. And I take that link and I put it over into WordPress. And I realize we're talking a little geeky today, and this is kind of a visual thing. But my point is, I don't really use much in terms of the blogging. I just type in a title so that when I look at my stats, I can see that, oh, this podcast named blah, 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 blah has been downloaded, whatever, 1,500 times. And so that's the only reason I type in a title. And that's the only thing I do with Libsyn in terms of their blogging engine. I don't even look at the comments. I just type in a title, I upload the file, and that's it. And then Libsyn spits out a link and says, here's where your MP3 file is, and I link that to my blog post. So my point is, if you're doing something and you're using my original idea of iTunes looks at FeedBurner, FeedBurner looks at your website, and you do something with Libsyn, well, did you hear Libsyn in that chain of command? iTunes looks at FeedBurner, FeedBurner looks at your website. So if you do anything in Libsyn in terms of blogging, it's not going to show up in iTunes, because what's iTunes looking at? Say it with me. FeedBurner. What's FeedBurner looking at? Your website. So typically in my recommendations, I don't use anything in terms of blogging. I'm just using Libsyn for their media host. Why? Because I get great stats, and it doesn't matter if I get 5 listeners or 5 million, I pay one price. That's why I like Libsyn, and I get great stats. Another company is Blueberry. Same kind of deal, podcasting company built by podcasters. Highly recommend them too. And even those guys have these blogging kind of tools. Don't use them. Just use them for the media host. And so what happens then is you go into your website, you make a blog post, and you simply, for lack of a better phrase, you attach your media to it, be it audio, video, or a PDF. So We go back to this one more time. iTunes looks at FeedBurner. FeedBurner looks at your website, and your website has a piece of media attached to a post, which is then shown in FeedBurner because FeedBurner is looking at your website and iTunes is looking at FeedBurner, and iTunes says, wow, there's media associated there, and it automatically downloads it. So that is some things to think about when troubleshooting your podcast. Hopefully that wasn't too geeky. I tried to keep this simple. I didn't want to go too deep into it. But the bottom line is, when you go to troubleshoot something, step back, think about what is involved in the process, in the system, and then try to isolate each part. The other thing that I cannot recommend enough is if you've been troubleshooting for a while and you're frustrated and you can't figure it out, go do something for 5 to 10 minutes to clear your mind, take a breath, get away from it. When I used to, originally I was a copier technician back in the day. And if I couldn't get a copier fixed, our boss always said, if you don't smoke, pretend you do and go outside and take a smoke break. Simply to get away, take a breath, chill out, and then come back. And many times with a fresh set of eyes, with your stress level taken down a bit, you will come back and see the solution to your problem. So keep that in mind. And if you have a problem that you can't solve, well, then you can hire me as a consultant and I will help you thwart whatever it is that is driving you crazy. And that is the word of the day. Try to use that in a sentence. Thwart. It's fun. It's fun to say. Thwart. If I have a kid, I'm going to name his middle name Thwart. This is, Stephen Thwart Jackson. Why not, right? At any rate, I'm feeling very weird tonight, a little tired. If you'd like to hire me, I was going to hire you as a consultant until you got into that weird thwart thing. Man, you're weird. My website is schoolofpodcasting.com. If you want like a self-by-self, step-by-step plan, we've got it there out at the website. If you want me as a consultant, you can do that as well. If you want to contact me, I would love to hear from you. A lot of times your questions, some of the things that we talked about today came from questions that I've answered during the week. And you can email me, dave@schoolofpodcasting.com. You can call in your comments, courtesy of podcastvoicemail.com. That's actually my preferred way because, it's a podcast and it gets your voice on the podcast as well. You can leave a comment out at our website at schoolofpodcasting.com. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's 2012. January is almost over. And if you said you're going to start a podcast this year, I believe that, do you hear that? Yeah, I believe that is the boat getting ready to leave. Don't wait. If you can work a word processor, if you can type a letter in Microsoft Word, if you can attach a file in an email, I believe you have the skills, the technical skills to create a podcast and to manage your own website. I truly believe that. And if you have any questions, if you have any worries, you sign up to the School of Podcasting and you're not happy, you can unsubscribe anytime within the first 30 days and I will refund your money. No questions asked. So there you go. That's enough of a plug for today. Thanks for listening. And until next week, class is dismissed.